Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Glenn Weinzimmer, and let's queer up education. Indiana State University blocked LGBTQ Pride Festival and is immediately sued, because that's what we do in America. An LGBTQ group is suing Indiana State University for blocking its 2025 Pride Festival on campus. The Pride Center of Terre, Haute, with the ACLU of Indiana, claims ISU violated the First Amendment by denying them access to the quad, a campus space for free expression. ISU hosted the festival in 2023 and 2024, but this year secured a deal to hold it off campus at a city park without the group's consent. The Pride Center argues this undermines the event's purpose of showing ISU as welcoming to LGBTQ students and staff. The lawsuit claims the university is discouraging queer support on campus. ACLU legal director Ken Falk, however, claims that ISU's refusal to host Pride Fest is censorship. He insists the Pride Center has a constitutional right to hold the festival on the quad. This case highlights ongoing battles for LGBTQ plus representation and rights on college campuses. This is a big deal, but not surprising with everything going on in our world right now, and funding, if they got, I don't know anything whether they're a private campus or not, but funding's being cut from organizations that are supporting DEI. And they supported it for just 2 years. I give them, where I would give them some credit, is they at least found a spot. They didn't say you can't do it at all and we're not associated. They're saying we found a new spot for you. And I don't know if they're providing sponsorship and they're still supporting it, but just not on campus. Like that part of it, I didn't dig deep enough to find that information out. So, you know, I obviously, like the rest of us, don't want to see this go off campus, but I'm just curious if there's more detail to they took the time and effort to find a spot.
Indiana State is a public college, and you know, I'm glad that when this happened, the response was, we're going to sue you. Win or lose, I'm glad that people are at least fighting back. This isn't the first campus issue. This year, one college decided, you know, they were afraid of how the government would treat them, so they canceled Chinese New Year.
And we did it for Pride down here. Remember, we were afraid of having drag queens, and so the city banned it from Pride.
Yeah.
Just out of fear.
But the thing that I think of looking at this, of like what got us here, you know, a lot of people didn't like all the students doing anti-war protests on their campus last year. And I was like, do they not have a constitutional right? And if they don't have a constitutional right, do we have constitutional rights for these things? It's like, you know, if students can't like make a scene on their campus, like where are they going to do it? And quite frankly, I'd prefer they do it on their campus and leave me out of it half the time, you know?
Yeah, and they need a safe space to express themselves on campus. When you think about, you know, our own experiences that we had over the years going back and the students today, I also, you know, we need to support the ACLU and other organizations that are fighting this wave because, you know, it's dumbing down our culture. To be blunt, you know, where are we going to end up if we just throw our shoulders up?
Right. The upside is we've made so many gains over the last decade or 2 decades that we're actually talking about LGBTQ on campus. Because 30 years, 40 years ago when I went to college, there was no conversation about LGBTQ anything, let alone a pride. So, you know, we talk about the pendulum swinging. We swing so far to the left in some ways that everything was accepted, but not by everybody. And did we shove it down someone's throat so hard that they're now pushing back? Were we at fault for going too quick, too fast? You know, but the fact that we're even having a conversation about LSU and Pride and the LGBTQ community is still a win because there's a conversation happening and there's an outrage. I also question, like, because again, did the university sit down after they told them they were moving them and have a conversation? Did they have a conversation with the university before they went to sue? Because that becomes a whole different thing. Like sometimes you can resolve issues, even in the Middle East, by having a conversation and knowing your neighbors. Absolutely. You know, was the immediate hammer to let's sue them because we have a right to have our voice, as opposed to saying, can we find a compromise while staying on campus?
You wonder if there's some type of mediator that would have been available between the campus.
Before you go to this point.
My money's on the administration didn't talk to the kids. You look at any time a college decides to make a decision, they don't talk to the student groups. They don't talk. Some schools, they ignore their own faculty. Like Columbia University recently ignored their own faculty.
I'm going to jump in here because I was one of those academics, right? And I ran a couple of universities. So I think what, to Glenn's point earlier, is what we are seeing is a lot of colleges and universities, because of the national conversation, retreat from DEI. They're actually organizing departments, retitling positions. You know, over the last like 15 years, we've seen an increase in the number of vice presidents for diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of those positions are being retitled at a lot of colleges and universities out of fear from the Trump administration. And I hate to say that name. You know, the Chronicle of Higher Education has actually been monitoring this pretty closely. Couple of hundred college and universities have gotten rid of DEI already. So there is this much larger fear of college and universities that they're at risk of losing federal funds if they don't respond appropriately. And so I think a lot of college and universities are fearful, right? And I do think that potentially, I'm going to push back on you, Alex. I think that the administration probably did go to the students and talk about the fact that, listen, we're in this really challenging environment right now. We have to move it off campus. And I do think, I'm pretty sure, you know, I know some colleagues at ISU, and I do think that they probably did definitely talk to the dean of students there is really good. And I think that they did go and say, listen, this is the position that we're in. We have to move it on. And I think what we're seeing here is a case of the students saying, no, if the fraternity can hold their little festival on the campus, why can't we? And I think that's the main issue, is that why can other groups and why can't we? We should be recognized just like any other group there is, and we should not be discriminated against based on, you know, we're LGBTQ plus. And I think that's where the bone of contention is probably at in this particular case.
And the university gave him a wink and a nod and said, we can't do anything about it, but if you want to make a bigger deal out of it, we're not going to stop you from creating a lawsuit.
That's exactly, you know, in all full disclosure, that's exactly what I would have done, you know, being a chief of staff at any university. I would have said, listen, this is where we're at, but, you know, if you want to go there, you have a right to go there.
What's interesting, before you close it out, is that the sad part is that those who go to state schools usually have less resources. Those that are going to private schools like the University of Miami that doesn't get federal funding are more likely for the elite to allow people to express themselves, where at state schools, because of fear from funding, from a funding perspective, they're pulling those things.
Well, private schools do get a lot of federal money, actually, in research. And actually, there's a whole issue where they're going to be cutting how that research money can be spent, which is going to lead to a lot of staff declines. On the other hand, I hear you. I just think that if we were to do a bet, I'd just be very comfortable with my bet. That's all I'm saying.
I'll be very comfortable knowing colleagues in higher ed that I'm comfortable with my bet. But to Glenn's point, though, you are right, Alex, that private institutions do get some funding. However, the state institutions rely primarily, like 90%, on.
And I do know the University of Miami because my ex was pretty high up at the University of Miami. And when the first Trump administration had all of its, you know, anti-LGBT stuff that they were circulating, that the University of Miami they pushed back because there was nothing they could do, or to the point of our governor. You know,
even in this climate, if you're a private institution, you have a lot of leeway in comparison to what we're seeing, particularly in the state of Florida with our state institutions. Look at all of our state institutions; they had to follow the book ban. University of Miami did not have to follow.
That's exactly where I was going with that.
So the regulations are a little bit different. You know, nonetheless, though, private institutions have to recognize they do risk losing all this funding, and they are. I mean, there's been these cases of like NIH, right, which, as we know, is being gutted and not really funded. That does impact, you know, institutions. However, overwhelmingly, the public institutions have more at risk. And so that's why they're responding. And when a Chronicle actually just did their study, and they have a tracker that's tracking, you know, the institutions that are getting rid of DEI, overwhelmingly, it is the public institutions, the state institutions, because, again, they're so worried and concerned about, you know, their dollars, the public dollars that come to them. So that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.